So welcome back to the podcast. I've got one of my good friends here, Paul Owen, all things sales, and we're going to have a chat about sales today. So Paul, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Dean. Pleasure to be here.
We've tried to record a few podcasts. We got one out last year with audio, but for some reason the video went awry. So hope fingers crossed, we've got both video and audio this time. So, Paul, I want to kind of kick off with asking you the tough questions, right? Why is sales so difficult in 2025 compared to, say, why does it feel more difficult for a lot of people, do you think?
Good question. I think that people have always found sales difficult, and I'll come back to why. What's changed? I think the biggest thing that's probably changed, Dean, and it's a change for the better in lots of ways, is more people are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like practically everybody now is selling in one way, shape, or form. I think they probably already were and always were, but now whether it's selling your knickknacks on eBay or creating your YouTube channel, or just recognizing that you have to persuade people internally, or sell to your kids to go to bed, whatever it might be, I think there's a slightly stronger recognition that we're all in selling. So it's just a bigger group of people coming in to sell who are then finding it hard because it's, relatively speaking, new to them and unfamiliar to them.
Yeah. And I guess from my perspective, obviously I'm talking to an audience that's generally business owners, but you'll be talking to business owners, salespeople, all sorts of people in what you do in terms of sales. Do you think that, like, where do I say it? Well, there's two things. Given that more people are selling or recognizing that they need to sell, do you think the standard of selling is getting better, or do you think you need to be better at it? I'll tell you the context, right? 10 years ago, I could create a message and fire it out on LinkedIn or fire it out on email, and I'd get bites. If I tried that same thing today, just like, copy and paste stuff, and whether we'll have the conversation of whether that is even selling, but I tried that, it would work. And now you got no chance doing that. Do you think that behavior or some of that kind of automated stuff has meant the need to be better, or the standard has to be higher to get results?
The simple answer is yes, because anybody can do it now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this strange thing about communication, Dean, that I think applies across all of communication, but I'll keep it within sales for now, is the easier it becomes to send out fairly okay messages to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, the less valuable that communication becomes, because anyone can do it. In some respects, the best way to get people to read your message right now is to send out your message in the post in a handwritten envelope, because it's pretty unusual that people receive that. So what you have, and this is going to sound like a weird analogy now, Dean, but bear with me. There's some of the challenges that we face in our education system, where you've got lots of graduates in the UK now who graduate and say, oh, there's not enough graduate jobs, and you need to be a graduate in order to do almost any job. You get an inflation around having a degree, which runs the risk of, I've got 2 or 3 kids who will probably end up going to university, but it runs the risk of devaluing the thing that you went for there in the first place. So I think making communication easier has some beneficial effects, but actually it changes the whole game. And so it becomes, if you were sending those, let me say that your messages were 7 out of 10 quality 10 years ago, now they're going to be 9.5 out of 10 to even get somebody to open them.
Mm-hmm. And so, okay, so let's just go back to, like, what do you think are the fundamentals of selling then? And I know we've only got a limited amount of time here, but what do you think are, like, the core principles of selling well?
The first thing, and people like me, and by that I mean sales trainers, sometimes get mocked for this idea, Dean, but it's important. The first thing is a phrase I say again and again, and you've probably heard me say it before. If we want to change how we do sales, we have to first change how we think about sales.
Mm-hmm.
if you see sales as being what many people still do, or pestering, forcing, or whatever it might be, then it doesn't matter how well you train them or I train them or whatever it is to do, you won't do it. Why? Because you feel uncomfortable doing it. And you won't sustain an activity doing something you feel uncomfortable doing. So the fundamentals is that people have to reframe sales. They have to think again what selling is. The good news for them is that we now are much more aware, I think, as people, that the concept of selling in that old style, i.e., through my persuasive powers, I can make Dean do whatever I want him to do, including giving me money. I think we've all realized that's nonsense. I think it always was nonsense, but we now know that it is. And so we don't force people to buy. We help people make good buying decisions. So that's the first thing. And it's the biggest change for many, like you mentioned before, working with business owners who set up their business and they often have great ideas and then they neglect the fact that you actually have to go out to strangers and tell them about your idea in order to make your business grow. Is you're a salesperson first and a business person second, but you first have to change how you think about it. If you're able to do that, then the next point becomes, I think, two stages. One, recognizing the people that genuinely might actually buy what you offer. So you must have this in your role as well, Dean. You speak to people and you say, okay, so who's your market? Oh, everyone. Literally, we can help. We can help everyone all around the world. Like, whether you can or whether you can't doesn't really matter. You're not going to. You're simply not going to do that. So identify who's actually going to be genuinely interested in what you do. So if you're trying to sell to the wrong people, it doesn't matter how well you sell. You're not going to sell to them. And then the third element, I think, is that recognition that selling is much more about asking questions and listening to people than it is talking at people. And so that also for business owners can make them feel a bit more comfortable to sell, because it's not pitch, pitch, pitch. It's ask questions and listen to people, which is probably for the non-salesperson who needs to sell a more comfortable place to be having conversations.
So when we're talking about, just for a minute, about that kind of whole questions, but also that bit before about who can you best sell it to, one of the things I come across is that often we put lots of people we can sell into the same bucket. And like you could sell sales training to one company and sales training to another company, but their needs, you're doing sales training, but within sales training, there's like 10 different things, say, that you could offer them. That questioning bit becomes really important to know which bit of that service is most important to them. Like, what's some of your thoughts about how do you understand the difference between different customer needs, and how do you do that in like question them without it being an interrogation?
Oh, that's two quite big questions in one go. I think first of all, the identification of the ideal client profile, i.e., these people are perfect, doesn't mean that you only sell to them because you can sell to other people. I think it means you specifically target time and money at those people. So I think there's a difference in selling. So there's certain kinds of sales teams that we do a lot of work with, and that's where we invest our marketing, our LinkedIn work that we do with your help, of course. And that's targeted at certain kind of clients where we know if we get in front of them, we know two things, probably three things. We know that they probably have a need that we understand. We know they have some money to pay, and we know that we have the track record that gives us a very high chance of winning the business. So that will be the first bit. But if somebody knocks on my door and says, I'm from a completely different part of the world and I love your work and it's a different market, and so there's very little cost of acquisition, then I'm not going to say, no, sorry, you're not my ideal client, but I don't want to work with you. So it's just separating those things before you target. As far as then identifying the questions, I just believe in life, Dean, you keep things as simple as possible. So you think of that ideal client or around and about that ideal client, and you think, what are the challenges that they are going to face with which you can help? And then you're simply writing down the questions that uncover if they have that need at all. So a big one for me, for example, I work a lot with telesales teams where they're making outbound cold calls to just find out if people are interested and then send us information and book meetings and start a process. And what typically happens, a classic challenge in that market will be a lack of consistency. Everybody can be good sometimes,
Mhm.
but it's a whole different ballgame to be good all the time. So when I get to meet the sales directors, managing directors of those companies, that's an area that I'll hone in on as far as questioning is concerned to bring that issue to the surface.
So what kind of question would that be to kind of find that inconsistency, just so that we can give people like a practical example?
Yeah, well, it's always rather than an example, I must give you a framework for it. So the angle really is, and this is really simple to do, is when we start talking to anybody about a challenge, we're typically the challenge we're trying to, the aim we have, Dean, is to work out where are you now and where do you want to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to the gym, they sign up and go, why are you coming here, Dean? Oh, I feel a bit out of shape and I want to go running with my kids, but struggling with it or whatever it might be. And then you jump forward to, or next year, what do you want to do? Oh, I really want to run the marathon and run with my kids, whatever. Okay, so we're going to be the conduit to get from where you are now to where you want to be tomorrow. So, and asking about where people are now is an easy starting point.
Mhm.
Don't ask people about their 5-year strategy after 10 seconds. It's too big a question. So it's just, how happy are you with the sales team right now? How are they performing? And I might ask them, how would you rate their performance out of 10? And then there's a few different ways where the open questions like that of just getting people talking, they'll often share with you. But going back to your question, how do you then laser in? If they don't mention it, then you're probably going to say something along the lines of, what we find with a lot of teams in your market is that people are outstanding on Tuesday, ordinary on Wednesday, and zone out by Thursday and Friday. So they do just enough to keep their job and just enough to keep their revenues, but they're probably only working at 80 to 90% for 2 days of the week.
Mhm.
The difference of we bring to them is we make it much more likely that we enable people to be at 70, 80, 90. Nobody's at 100%, but 90% for 5 days of the week.
Mhm.
Is that the kind of consistency that would make a difference to your company? And so sometimes you let them share with you, sometimes you have to provoke the thought and ask them directly on the question. But I tend to side with the just ask nice, easy, general opening questions to get people talking.
Okay. So then you kind of then you could reach a point where they say almost like, yeah, that's what I want. That's the point where you would say, well, this is how we could help. And it can be, it doesn't have to be like a big PowerPoint pitch or
No.
anything like that. It can be literally an overview of this is how we could do it. You don't have to go into massive amounts of detail. There's one thing that I feel like in my side of the work, because obviously I'm dealing with a lot of business owners, that people get really uncomfortable with follow-up. And as much as I would, this is my view, you might disagree with me and feel free to. I always feel like even when people have big goals and they're really excited about getting the goals, whether it be, getting that team to work 80, 90%, 5 days a week, right? There is still that kind of the status quo is the default.
Mm-hmm.
And that people can happily, if something isn't kind of like hitting them between the eyes or, really, really deeply hurting that they have to change it now, they will let the status quo roll on. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of people, especially those who are not, sales pros or had any training, will often avoid the follow-up because they feel that the customer should want to buy. Mm-hmm. What's your take on, is follow-up important? What's your angle on follow-up? Because I get people who avoid follow-up.
It's probably definitely in the top 3 and arguably the most important part of selling is to follow up. There are not many occasions, you'll have a few, Dean, you've obviously got a very good track record of what you do, where you'll have a single conversation with somebody and they go, great, Dean, where's your bank account details? I'll send it over. But I suspect that I wasn't an untypical client for you in that I had various different interactions along the way. I chatted to a couple of your team, came to some webinars and so on. There's a process we all go through of checking out people. Mm-hmm. And it's very rare. Not many of us just see something and buy it straight away. We want to check things out. I know you do that, and I think you do it very well, by the way, of just having those regular touch points. And so I think the answer I give to that when people say, oh, do I really have to do follow-up, is look at the way you buy yourself. How often do you walk in somewhere and make a significant buying decision based on one short interaction?
Mm.
You don't. You don't do that. You might do that with a coffee, maybe. And they've got a coffee shop now as well. So maybe you'll tell me it's not quite the same with coffee. Maybe they have to walk past 25 times before they come in. But follow-up has to happen. So so that's number one. It's a massively important part of any business and any sales process. But then I have to take you back to where we started, because one of the reasons people struggle with follow-up is they're uncomfortable with the concept of selling, because they equate following up with pestering people. I'm chasing people up. Oh, if they were interested, they would buy. That's nonsense. I've looked for tradespeople to do something in my garden, fix our roof, build a wall, and they send a quote, and it just sits in the inbox and doesn't go anywhere. People need to be nudged through a process step by step. But because people feel uncomfortable with the idea of selling, they feel uncomfortable with the idea of following up. So that's the first thing. So once you realize that you're not pestering anybody, you're helping them to make a decision, and you're realizing that as humans, we can get stuck in, a little bit of thinking about it land. But move back from that, the other challenge that people face when in that follow-up phase is, it's probably a top three thing that I'm brought in to help people with, Dean, is they'll say, we're struggling to sustain momentum in the sales process. And my first question is, forget sustaining momentum. How are you creating momentum?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't create momentum. So we have a good chat, and you're interested in my services, Dean. I go, oh, great, it's been great to have a chat, Dean. Have a think and let me know. Like, really? Have a think and let me know? Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
If Dean is interested, then actually, genuinely, he probably wants something a little bit more tangible to move forward. And so the issue of momentum is, once it's lost in the sales process, once you're following up again and again, you've got a difficult problem to solve. So you have to work back from that and say, right, how do I make sure I create momentum? So for me, in any sales meeting, at the end of it will be, listen, Dean, sounds to me like you're quite interested. And these things aren't going to get better without taking action. And I think we can help. What I suggest to do is I get across perhaps some recent examples of companies like yours that we've worked with. I also give you an idea of what it would cost if you decide to move forward. And I also give you a little insight to the kind of content we would expect to cover with your team. Take me a bit of time to do that, Dean. So I'll get it across to you by the close of play on Monday of next week. And all I suggest is we speak on Tuesday, speak on Wednesday, and we can talk it through. If you like it, we can talk about next steps. If you don't, then maybe we're not right for you. Are you happy to speak to me again next Monday or Tuesday? Like, agree the next step there and then. You're not forcing them. We're not able to force people to do things, but you have to nudge people forward a little bit. It doesn't always work. It doesn't mean they always pick up the phone next Monday, but it makes it much more likely.
I think one of the things that we miss and I don't know whether I've been able to articulate this very well, is when we do that when we don't do something like that, we're effectively putting all of the effort on the customer's behalf to basically go, well, I'm going to ask you for this. And it feels like it could, the other perspective is it comes across as you don't care. You're not interested.
Completely. You have to make things easy. I went to buy a bed 20 years ago, Dean, and it was the first bed I'd ever bought. I won't do the whole story, but I remember at the end of this torturous 90 minutes in a bed shop in London with my wife and three small children, as we were leaving, the salesman said to us, well, Mr. and Mrs. Owen, I've given you a lot to think about. And all I thought was, congratulations, Sherlock. That's not your job. Your job isn't to complicate this process. Your job is to simplify this process. We'd have walked out of that shop with a bed that day if he'd have actually made it simpler. So there's a phrase that I was taught years and years ago in sales, which I think holds true today, which is make the first yes an easy one. If people are interested, make the first step easy. If you want to move forward, here's what it is. Click on this link, pay, and we'll see you next Tuesday, or whatever it might be. And people underestimate the help that you want because they misunderstand sales. They think that I don't want to force people. You will never force someone to buy something they don't want to buy. And by the way, if you do, they'll pull out before they pay.
Yeah. So just taking that one step further. So that whole reframe, How does somebody practically kind of start that journey of reframing it? Because if it's been instinctively drilled into them that sales is bad or sales is pushy or whatever, that's a little bit of a journey they've got on to kind of work that out of their system.
Mm.
What would you say are some of the things they could do to kind of get over it?
It's a difficult one. They should obviously hire me to do training. Thanks for the intro on that, Dean. That's one quick way to do it. It's not an easy one to do. So if I talked, for example, about a typical day of training where I'd go in, I won't do the whole day, don't wait, but I'd go in and do 8 hours with a team, then it will probably have about 90 minutes at the beginning on the reframing idea, which I won't go through with you necessarily now, but it does take, and then it has to be reiterated, and then lots of examples I give. So when I do, for example, in my training, when I do sales questioning, I use as the framework for sales questioning a visit to your GP.
Yeah.
Your GP is selling to you. You know, they've got a pretty structured set of questions. They ask, what's the problem? They ask a bunch of follow-up questions. They ask about your background and your history, a bunch of follow-up questions. They ask about your lifestyle, what job you do, your diet, a bunch of follow-up questions. And then they sell to you. Okay, Dean, to get better, here's what you need to do, and off you go. And so it's not an easy switch, but actually it's not all that hard either. Because when you think about life, you are surrounded by sales. You know, we're all being sold to at the bus stop with a marketing idea. Social media is one massive sales machine, constantly putting messages in front of us to sell. Every doctor's selling to you. When you really break it down, every teacher, Dean, teachers hate this idea, but every teacher faces the same challenge as a cold call salesperson. When you call somebody up on a cold call, they're thinking, "Who the hell are you, and why should I listen to you?" And every teacher walks into the room, and every truculent teenager is sitting in that room, thinking, "Who the hell are you, and why should I listen to you?" You have to sell content as a teacher. You have to. I can almost guarantee your favorite subject at school, Dean, and don't cross me here, but almost definitely your favorite subject at school was at some stage taught by your favorite teacher. They brought it alive. They breathed love and enthusiasm into poetry or history or tech or whatever it might be.
I can tell you a story, right? And this is, I probably the teacher would be banned now, but because all the world. So my favorite subject at school was business studies, right? And my business studies teacher used to use the most ridiculous analogies to get the class to engage. So there was always he used to use analogies. This is really bad. I might get cancelled for this. Might take you down with me, Paul.
Yeah, I guess go for it.
So basically, he would use analogies of business, like if I was a drug dealer, if I was running a prostitution business, and I was from a rough council estate, but those analogies were quite funny, but they were not the classic boring analogies. You'd get fired and banned for life now, but everybody was hooked on the lessons.
Because that's what they do. Great teachers tell stories that connect. So I often get it from clients. When I was within Yorkshire just this week and did the feedback at the end after 4 days over the last 4 months, and their sales director, who's been in sales for 30 years, and she said, "I love the way that you connect sales to everyday interactions." And I'll tell stories about, a taxi driver who was brilliant at asking questions. And he was just, chatting to me, and the doctor and the bed salesman, whatever it might be. It's like it's all around you. A surgeon, I probably haven't got time to tell you every story here, but there was a surgeon who gave us some advice about our daughter when she was first born, and it was very helpful advice. She had some health issues. And as soon as he said these words, I was like, wow, that's a brilliant analogy for sales management. And I still use it to this day. So you're surrounded by, so back to your question of earlier, it's just when you look around and see the way we all communicate, then we are persuading, implementing, negotiating, whatever it might be, for, if not the majority of our time, then for a large amount of our time. In fact, Gallup did a survey on behalf of Daniel Pink, who wrote To Sell is Human a few years ago, saying that we're all in sales. And excuse me, they asked people to jot down in 15-minute segments what they were doing day in, day out at work. And there were over 10,000 people in this survey. And what they found was even people in non-sales jobs spent 40% of their time on average selling, influencing, persuading, presenting, negotiating, whatever it might be. And so when you do step back and think about it, we all sell every day. But we just have an image of what sales is, which is, I don't know, Danny DeVito playing Matilda's dad in the film, or Wolf of Wall Street, or
Yeah.
Boiler Room. We've got a certain image, like we call that sales. The kind of selling that you do, people go, oh, yeah, but Dean's not selling. No, Dean is selling. I promise you, it's selling. I promise you, I'm selling. It just doesn't feel that image that we have of 1970s slick insurance salesperson trying to win a deal and then get out the door before you change your mind.
And I think it's fascinating if we approach it with that kind of mindset of, we're pestering people. It doesn't matter what you do. You will always say the best thing to do is say nothing then. And that's self-defeating kind of point. But I think there is an element of you have to reframe it as, I think the doctor's a really good analogy. I'm here to help people. And sometimes they, the whole questioning piece and understanding where they're at and what's important to them, and then proposing the medication, the treatment plan.
Yeah.
And then, so here's the next steps. I think that, and the momentum piece you've just shared there, I think is really good. And, you're going to be sharing some of this stuff at Growth Titans. You did an amazing talk last year in London, and you're coming to Manchester. What are you going to be sharing at Growth Titans?
Well, I'm looking forward to it, by the way. So I'm going to, I don't know how long you allow me these days, Dean. It's about 35, 45 minutes or something like that. So I have 3 themes, and they're all addressing that fundamental issue at the beginning of misunderstanding of sales, because my overarching piece is you won't change how you do it until you change how you think of it. So I'm going to start by talking to people about that idea we discussed already. It's not pushy, you're genuinely helping people. And by the way, just going back to your point there on the analogy with the doctor, I can't be on a podcast with you, Dean, and not just cover my main point. Is selling is none of the bad things that you think it is. Selling is helping people to make good buying decisions. In order to help people make good decisions, you have to find out the truth about their needs. Every single part of the sales process becomes easier when you find out the truth about people's needs. And so for me, sales, at the very, very heart of sales, is a mission, and it's a laudable, admirable mission. Sales is the search for truth. When you find out the truth about something, then you can help people. And the truth might be sometimes that you're not right for them, but you have to find out the truth. I think it fundamentally changes how you do sales. It makes it question focused. It fundamentally changes how you think about your job when you're selling. And importantly, it changes who you think you are when you're selling. Because if you're uncomfortable doing it, you won't do it. So I want to talk to people about that, and talk to them about, every GP and every teacher, and give them some examples from day-to-day life that they will be doing, and they just don't call it selling, but it is selling. So I want to do that first. Then another thing we've not talked about here at all, which I think is really, really important, especially for the kind of business owners that you speak to, is that sales is not a natural skill that if you don't have it, you can't learn it. It's just nonsense. There is no evidence for that fact, all right? It's a learnable skill. And yes, for those people frowning at that point, some people pick it up quicker than others, just like some people pick up the guitar quicker than others. Every skill, people just sometimes pick it up quicker. But sales is a learnable skill. Does that mean that everyone will become brilliant? Well, probably not. But there's a bunch of reasons why that's the case, and it's not much about whether it's a skill. But can everybody get better at it? 100%. I have no doubt whatsoever that every single person who wants to get better at sales can learn how to do it. And often people don't gravitate towards sales, or rather avoid it, because they say, "Oh, I'm not a salesperson. My mate Dave, he's really good and he's natural." I can almost guarantee Dave talks too much. Anyone that you think of as a natural salesperson talks too much. So it's not natural. And then the final bit is, we've touched on it briefly here, and I think it works well for non-salespeople, especially who have recognized they probably need to sell, is it's not about talking, it's about listening. The best way to become a better salesperson is to ask more questions and genuinely listen to people. And counterintuitively, it's also the best way to become a better human. You know, we all talk too much. If I had one piece of advice for people, it would be like, ask more, listen more, talk less. Which sounds a bit strange to say in a podcast where I've been talking most of the time, I know.
No, but I think there's a good point there, because I've been reading about this whole. You could probably, like, if I go live on LinkedIn, I am really comfortable talking to people live on LinkedIn. But you put me on a one-on-one social thing, and I really
Oh,
struggle.
really?
Yeah, I struggle with one-on-one social interactions. So I've been reading and doing these exercises about how do you feel. So the thought of networking terrifies the life out of me, right? Because I have to talk about generalized things rather than like my topic.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this whole exercise where it talks about actually the best way to really get on with somebody you've never met in person is to just ask them about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't need to volunteer any information about yourself, just show interest in the other person. That's the best way to engage another human being.
Yeah.
Which mentally, I think, does it not come across as like, being like too invasive, but actually people love to talk about their bit.
Yeah, absolutely right. I was going to mention that on networking because again, it's a big thing that people don't like or feel very uncomfortable with. I would suggest to those people, I think if people saw me networking, they go, "Oh, well, you're very comfortable networking," which is not trying to, say that I'm amazing, but I've got over my hang-ups on it. But do I look forward going to a networking event? Absolutely not, Dean. I would choose not to go. Honestly, you go for a certain reason. But what I've become better at doing is exactly what you just talked about there, which is just go. Don't go into a networking function and think I have to tell 10 people about what I do and make it worthwhile. Just go and ask questions about people. You're not going to sell something at a networking do. What you want to create at a networking do is, could I find 3 people that it's worth following up with? How do you find out if they're worth following up with? You get them to talk about themselves. That's much easier for most people to do, to just go and ask questions. And I almost like the idea of networking, like we've networked and we're chatting for like 10 minutes and they go, anyway, nice to meet you, Dean. And as I'm walking away, I go, oh, but what do you do? And it's, you have to call me to find out, which clearly I never do. But you want to not I want you to want to speak to me again. That's what I want in networking. I don't want you to have gone, oh yeah, I'm not looking at sales training. I want some interaction thereafter. And another point, just to leave you with while we're on questioning, I don't know how much longer we've got left, but there's many, many benefits of asking questions. And you just mentioned one there. People tend to relax and enjoy themselves when they are talking about themselves. You're unlikely to get too personal with the questioning. But the reason questioning is so important, amongst the many benefits it provides in sales situations and in social situations, is that it changes how people feel about you, because you make them feel important when you show a genuine interest. And in a sales situation, we effectively start with every person we meet, we're in position A. And position A is, I don't know you, I don't like you, and I don't trust you. And we have to move them to position B, which is, I know you, I like you, I trust you. If we're going to change how people feel about us, the most powerful way to do that is to change how they feel about themselves when they're with us. And they'll remember that. We've made them feel important. They won't remember what we said. They won't remember anything, but will remember that we made them feel good. And you do that far better through listening than you will ever do through talking.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in May.
Be good.
Yeah. So look, you want to get signed up to come and hear Paul. He'll be around for most of the day, so you can literally, listen to what he says and then go pick his brains, and he might ask you a few questions. But yeah, go meet him, come to the event. I know loads of people had awesome feedback from his talk in November. It was November, yeah. So Paul, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We got the video, so we'll do the video as well, which is great. And I'll see you in May.
Great. Thanks, team. See you then.